Hi, my name is Jessi Beyer, and I'm a speaker, author, and mental health advocate. Today, I'm a guest on The Inspiring Show.
Welcome to The Inspiring Show with Paul and Jennifer Hensel, featuring inspiring interviews with thought leaders, storytellers, entrepreneurs, influencers, and legacy builders just like you. Learn from experts about finding your voice, mastering your mindset, and creating movements with your message. Tap into timeless wisdom and today's top strategies for transcending to new levels of success, happiness, and joy.
Hi everyone, I'm Paul Hensel from The Inspiring Show. Today's guest is Jessi Beyer. Jessi Beyer is a speaker, author, and mental health advocate who's on a mission to help those around her design lives they love waking up to. Jessi has been featured in dozens of media outlets, including Best Company, Elite Daily, and Thrive Global. She has also presented to thousands of people at numerous universities and organizations nationwide, including Missouri State University and Fairygodboss. Jessi believes that discussions are the missing ingredient in removing the stigma surrounding mental health. Because of this, she wants to help people feel valid, heard, and appreciated in their mental health struggles and know they're not alone. Well, hope you enjoyed today's interview with Jessi Beyer.
Thanks again. Yeah, I'm super excited to be here.
Awesome. So please take us back and share with us, the moment that changed things for you.
Absolutely. So that moment for me was when I was in high school. And just to set the scene a little bit, I was a sophomore in high school, and I had this really good friend of mine who I realized was struggling with his mental health. Now, we were in line for track practice. We were wearing short sleeves. It was spring. And I saw some scars on his forearm. And I knew what they were. I didn't really want to acknowledge that I knew what they were. And so I asked him if he had cats. I felt like that was a good answer. I could, kind of cross that question off the list if he said yes. And he said no. And over the next week or so, it really came out how much he was struggling. So I learned that he was self-harming, that he was depressed, suicidal, kind of the whole shebang there. Now, over the next year and a half, I became his everything. I was his confidant. I was his best friend. I was the person that he called when he needed help. And I felt really proud of that. I had this great responsibility. I was helping someone. I had this huge role in their life. And I stepped way over the line. I took his whole world and I put it on my shoulders. And I was like, I'm going to be responsible for keeping you alive. I'm going to do whatever it takes to keep you happy and to keep you alive. And as you can probably guess, that's not the best way to approach a relationship like that.
Yeah.
Over the course of that year and a half, my mental health really started to decline as well. So I started becoming depressed, anxious. I was self-harming. I was really struggling with food and my body image and things like that. I was kind of just one step behind him on that downward slope. Wow. Now, in that relationship, I made him promise me one thing. I made him promise that if he was going to take his own life, that he would give me a hug beforehand. Now, I told him that I wanted the hug so, I could be there with him, but it was also so that I knew and I could do something about it and I could prevent it.
Yeah.
So it was the spring of my junior year of high school when he texted me and he said, "Can you come over? It's time to say goodbye." And that night was the moment that changed everything, because I, on one hand, knew how much he was struggling and I knew what it would feel like to have my best friend betray me and call the cops on me. But on the other hand, I couldn't just let him, follow through with this and take his own life. Yeah. So I ended up calling the police on him and he was placed on an involuntary psychiatric hold. Unfortunately, we don't have much of a relationship anymore, but I do know that he is still alive and still, doing all the things. So that night was really what changed everything for me. That is where my trauma is stemmed in. That's where my passion for mental health is stemmed in. And it really just showed me a lot about who I was as a person and what I valued and how far I would go to save someone, just in a different perspective than I thought.
So that obviously must have been very tough.
It was.
Now, did you have second doubts about even calling the police at that time?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. It took me years to feel good about what I did. When he got to the hospital that night, he got his phone for a little bit and he sent me a text and he's just said, "I trusted you." And that text just gutted me because I know that he trusted me. I know he put his whole self in my hands, and I turned around and threw it away to the cops. For a long time, that's how I saw that, was that I betrayed him, that I took away his control, his choice. And like I said, it took me years to actually think that, hey, maybe I did a good thing. Maybe I did make a positive impact instead of a negative impact. So yeah, I definitely had second doubts.
Wow. So he actually wanted you to just be with him so he could end it.
Yeah,
Is that right?
absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I totally understood where he was coming from, though, because when you're in those mental health struggles and everything feels so out of control, your emotions are out of control, your life is out of control, having the power to say, I'm going to leave at this time and in this manner with this person around me is really, really intoxicating. So I got where he was coming from. I got why he wanted to do what he wanted to do. But, like I obviously said, I decided that he wasn't going to go out that way and that we were going to try a different path there.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, that's hard to say from the outside, but I think you made the right choice.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of people have told me that. And like I said, I've gotten to the point where it's like, okay, yeah, I think I made the right choice. But in the moment and in the years after that, where I was still struggling with my mental health, it was like, did I or didn't I? That was a big discussion point for me.
Wow. Well, thanks for sharing that. Now, what did you do after high school?
Yeah, so my first year of college, I was at the University of Edinburgh in Scotland at their veterinary school. And
Oh, wow.
that was a crazy experience. It was so cool to go abroad at barely 18 and live in Europe and things like that. But unfortunately, that program wasn't the right fit for me. I just felt like my ethics weren't aligned with their ethics, and just it wasn't the best fit for me. So I left after 1 year and I went and got my EMT license in British Columbia and then finished off my bachelor's degree in psychology at the University of Minnesota.
Oh, wow. Good for you. So did you have to work through any feelings of failure and shame? Because, you decided to go overseas. That's a big step in itself. But then, making the decision to leave after a year. So how did
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. That was the biggest thing for me, is I had this huge internal battle between, am I quitting? Am I a failure? Versus am I just being self-aware and recognizing that, hey, this isn't a good fit for you. I fought so hard to get into that school. Like, I had to fight my parents. I had to fight finances. I had to fight a 6% admissions rate for international students to get into that school. Like, I fought so hard to get into that school. And then to turn around 9 months later and be like, oh, never mind, I'm going to go home. That was really, really difficult for me. And it took a lot of talks with my friends, a lot of outside opinions. So one moment that really changed everything for me and that helped me realize that I wasn't quitting or failing was I was chatting with my friend, my best friend from over there. And I was telling her about this wilderness EMT program that I wanted to do and how it was so exciting and yada, yada. And she just paused and she looked at me and she said, I have never seen you light up as much as you just did when you're talking about vet med. And I was like, oh, it just hit you that it was like, my passion is here and this is where I light up and I'm so excited about this and I see a future with this. And then I turn around and have to go to vet school lectures and it's just like banging my head off the desk all day. It was like, I can't do this for another 4 years and then a career on top of that. So having that reassurance and having other people see where my passion really lied helped me make that leap and say, all right, I'm going to take the risk. I'm going to leave and I'm going to do what I think is best for me at this point.
Was it like that with everyone? How was it like with your family or your parents making that decision?
It was different for sure. My mom told me before I left that if it wasn't the right fit, I could always come home. And I was kind of holding on to that. But telling her that and telling my dad that, especially after how hard I fought to convince them that I should go in the first place, it was very emotional. I was very terrified to do that. But ultimately they did support me and they helped me, find a new place to be. And my mom helped move me out to Minnesota when I was there. And so they were ultimately supportive, but I just tried not to let myself think about what they thought, because then it would have been so easy to get stuck in this trap of, well, they think I'm quitting and they think I'm failing, so therefore I am quitting and failing. It was like, no, we've already done the work and determined that we're not, that we're just being self-aware. But, having their support through that whole process, even though it was emotional in the beginning, was definitely really helpful as well.
Now, you mentioned earlier that when you were a sophomore in high school, you had mental health issues that you were dealing with. Has this carried through now?
No, I'm happy to say I'm clean and free from that, but it definitely took until probably my freshman year of college for me to really work through all of that. And I think honestly, leaving vet school helped, as well as getting on a path that I was really, really passionate about. I think helped with all that as well.
And so what kind of struggles were you dealing with, like with mental health back, for those years?
The biggest part was definitely some depression. I was also struggling with food and my body image and,
Oh, yeah.
wanting to look a certain way and trying to force myself to look that way by eating a certain way. I was self-harming a little bit. I was definitely isolating. For the longest time, I was terrified to be open about it. I resented that part of my life. I didn't want anything to do with it. I didn't want anyone to know about it. And it took me failing in life and career things for me to realize that it's really hard to build a life you love when you're hating part of yourself.
Yeah.
And that was a big turning point for me. Simultaneously, I was having conversations with close friends and family members about their struggles and things they were going through. And when I was able to open up to them in that private setting and share what I had been through, it was really powerful for me to see their reactions of, I feel so much less alone. I'm so glad you told me this. I needed someone to tell me this today. Seeing how much of an impact that made it a lot easier for me to say, okay, I'm going to fully acknowledge my past. I'm going to use it as a tool for good. And I know that by simply just sharing my story, I can empower people, make them feel less alone, whatever that was, but I can have a positive impact on people.
So with relying on the support you had, which is good, were there other strategies you did to help with that?
I tried to go to therapy once when I was in high school. I went to one day of talk therapy and I was so uncomfortable. I felt like such a bad fit for that. And I literally ran out of the building and I never went back. And that is honestly one of my biggest regrets in my healing journey, is that I didn't have that professional support. It took a lot of trial and error, a lot of ups and downs, a lot of maybe this will work, maybe it won't, as I healed. And I truly believe that if I had that professional support and that support on another level, that I would have been able to heal much more quickly in much more of a straight line and just much more smoothly in general.
That's really good that you still came out on the other side without that help. But working through those on your own, are there tips or strategies you could share with our listeners, who might be, dealing with those kind of fears or anxiety or stress or depression?
Absolutely. The first thing that I would say is kind of what I just touched on, is get that professional help. There are so many benefits of having friends and family members that can support you, but there's a different level of support that a professional gives. It's also important to note that there's more options than just talk therapy. There are things like ecotherapy, equine assisted therapy, dance movement therapy. There are so many different options. So if you're uncomfortable with talk therapy, go find something else. There's so many different ways there. The second tip that I'd give is just to break down the stigma in your own mind. So if you are ashamed of your own struggles, if you are too scared to even talk about them or put names to them in your own mind, in your own head, it's going to be so difficult for you to reach out and ask for help. So just work at acknowledging that, hey, I'm struggling right now. Hey, this is a problem for me. Whatever that is for you, acknowledge that in your own mind, get comfortable with saying those words and saying those things so that when you are ready to ask for help, it's a lot more approachable and available to you. The final tip that I'd give as well is to get outside. And I don't mean this as this like overused vitamin D cliche, but nature is so powerful. It is so intuitive. It is so spiritual, and it acts as such a powerful co-therapist. So sit in your garden, go on a hike, go to the beach, whatever that looks like for you. Get outside and spend time in environments that you really connect with. That's another really powerful way to heal that doesn't necessarily require going to therapy, in that structured format, for example.
Yeah. For me personally, I can relate, after my accident, dealing with PTSD and anxiety, I had to stop beating myself up, because there's those feelings that come with, anxiety or leading towards depression. But taking that walk outside, taking that moment to breathe and really appreciate the small things in life can really help.
Absolutely. I was actually just on a hike earlier today, and I got to the top at this viewpoint that I like to be at.
Yeah.
And there was just this beautiful view in the sun, and this gust of wind just came funneled through right into me. And I just felt such a spiritual connection and so at peace just being there on the top of the hill. Like I wasn't even doing anything, just standing there, you know? So
Yeah.
nature is so powerful.
What kind of tips can you share about conquering fear? Because I imagine some of those feelings came up.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much everything was terrifying back then. The biggest tip that I can give to help someone overcome fear is make sure that your why is stronger than your fear. So it's not just about saying, I want this goal for this reason. It's making sure that you want it for yourself as opposed to trying to make someone else think a certain way about you. And it's about tying that why into an emotional connection. So for example, as a very easy example, if you want to run a marathon to get the t-shirt and the medal, that's cool, right? That's motivating. But if you want to run the marathon so you can discover your strength and prove to yourself that you can do hard things, that's even more motivating. Like I said, making sure that your why is internal, making sure that it's tied to some deeper emotional connection, and then making sure that you're using that when your fear comes up. Because you know through that why that the life you're building on the other side of fear, whatever it is that you're trying to change, is worth more to you than the temporary discomfort of being scared of failure or other people's opinions or anything like that. But no matter what that fear is, it really does just come back to having that strong why.
Oh, I like that. I like that a lot. What about, do you have any tips for self-reflection?
Absolutely. I think self-reflection is so important. So important, whether you're struggling with mental health or you're just looking at a personal development journey. The biggest thing that I would encourage people to reflect on are those subconscious thought processes that you're not always aware of, but that completely dictate your life. So look out for words like always and never. What are you telling yourself always happens or never happens? Look out for things like can't and should. Those words, when they pop up, okay, let's evaluate that. Am I doing this for myself? Am I doing this out of fear? Or am I doing this because this is really where I want to go? So just being aware of the language that you're using and how that determines your thoughts. So your thought processes completely inform your actions, because if you're constantly telling yourself, I'm never going to succeed at this, I always fail, I can't do this, I should just give up and get a normal job, for example, whatever it is you're telling yourself, you're going to believe that, and then you're going to act in accordance with that. So make sure that your thoughts are on your side before you even try to look at why the actions aren't working. Maybe there's some subconscious block there.
Yeah, for sure. That's good. Now, what are some actionable steps people can take to turn criticism into learning experiences?
Yes, definitely. This is one of my favorite things to talk about because it gets me really fired up. But one thing that I really hate is this line that, oh, everything happens for a reason. When you tell that to someone who's in the middle of struggling or being criticized or whatever that is, it's like, why? This is not happening for a reason. They get super angry, and I get it. But what I like to think is that with time, you can make a reason for anything. You can find some benefit out of everything. And I've really tried to put this into practice. So for example, when I was coming up with my book cover design, I sent an email out to my mailing list with the different cover options and was like, oh, which one do you like? Just getting feedback. And my cousin is on my mailing list. Now she called me right away as soon as she got this email. And she told me that my book was unfounded and unethical and that I had no place writing this and that yada, yada, yada. Just went on this tangent. She hadn't even read the book. She just saw the cover. And I was like, oh my gosh. And of course that really hurt and I got in my head for a little bit. But what I was able to do with that was look at that and say, okay, she saw the cover, the title, and the subtitle, and that's what she thought. How do I need to tweak this so that other people don't have that same initial gut reaction? And so I was able to actually look back at my subtitle and switch it up a little bit to something that was both more marketable and more accurate to what the book talked about. So using that example, the way you can look at criticism is by not getting so emotionally stuck up in it, but just stepping back and saying, okay, this person had this thought for this reason. Maybe they're completely invalid, but maybe there's something I can learn from this. Maybe this is a good marketing experience or relationship experience or whatever. So the biggest thing with criticism is to make sure that your emotions aren't stuck in it. So step back from that, look back and say, okay, their vehemence has nothing to do with me. That is their own problem. They got their own issues going on over there. But what can I learn? What can I change from what they said? from their perception. And maybe they're completely invalid and you just completely ignore them, which is fine. But if you can find that little bit in there to change and grow from, then that makes that whole potentially painful situation a lot less painful and actually beneficial.
Yeah, that's really
and
good.
recognize as well that most of the people that are criticizing you have their own issues and doubts and prejudices that have nothing to do with the work that you're doing.
Exactly. Yeah. Not to take it personally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So now you kind of mentioned your book. Tell us about your book.
What it's all about is basically everything I wish I knew when I was healing from my mental health struggles. It talks about 9 different natural and integrative therapies that can be powerful alternatives or additions to talk therapy. And it's a great tool for someone who doesn't want to go to talk therapy, who wants another option, to be able to sit down and say, okay, here's the research surrounding these. Here's what I can expect when I walk in the door. Here's what this looks like, which feels right to me, and then go pursue that healing method. Now, I love talk therapy. I think it's great. It's very backed by research. But if you are too uncomfortable to go in the first place because of the stigma, then it's completely useless. So the goal of this book is to provide those alternatives to just get people in the door and get people the help that they need with methods that are, you know, with the hand of a professional and that are backed by research and that are powerful in their own right as well.
Awesome. That's really good. What else are you up to? So just kind of tell us like your passions, your mission. You know, you coach women.
Yeah, I work mostly with women and then college students as well. So my mission is to help people just feel really valid and heard in all of the struggles that they're having, and then to use some personal development strategies to design lives that they actually want to wake up to. Now that looks like a couple different things. I obviously have my book. I have an online 6-week academy that goes through literally everything I know about building a life you love. So it's that full immersive program. Yeah. And then I also speak a lot. So at the time of recording, I just got back from Indiana and Texas to speak to 2 colleges there, to groups of their students. And then I'm headed out to a couple other places later this month and next month. So I love speaking. I love getting in front of people and having that connection with them and the conversations afterwards and things like that. So the 3 avenues of my business, like I said, are my book, speaking, and the academy. And then outside of work, I am also a canine search and rescue handler with my dog. So we do a lot of work there as well.
That's really cool.
Thank you.
Now, how about we dive into our speed round and I'll ask you 5 quick questions and you give me the first answer that comes into your head.
Perfect. Let's do it.
Okay. So what do you do for fun?
I like to read romance books, eat chocolate, and try baking things that usually end up horrible, but I try anyway.
Oh, okay. Nice. What's your favorite quote?
My favorite quote is by Charles Bukowski, and it goes, "We are here to laugh at the odds and live our lives so well that death will tremble to take us."
Ooh, I like that. Who has inspired you the most?
My best friend has inspired me the most because he is just the most communicative and dedicated person I have ever met. And yet he has so much going on in his own life, so many successes, so many struggles, but he is always there. He's always supportive. He's always smiling. And I just strive to be that person in relationships for others.
I like that. What's his name?
His name's Brian.
Brian. What's your favorite book?
My favorite book, I have so many. This is difficult. My favorite book is probably Taking Chances by Molly McAdams. It's another romance book, but it has such complex relationships and trauma in there that it's really interesting to read.
Cool. Nice. And what is a really good tool or resource that you could recommend to our listeners?
Yeah, so my favorite tool is going to make me sound like a suburban mom, but I love, love, love Pinterest because you can curate it in such a way to get so much inspirational content all the time. And it's also a really great tool that you can use to put your vision board and your why statement and these other tools that you have in physical form in an e-form so that you can bring them with you and have them, you know, at work and at the gym when you start to struggle there instead of just having them at home.
Awesome. And now how can people connect with you further? Okay.
So I am on Facebook and Instagram at Jessi Beyer International. That's Jessi with an I and Beyer with a B-E. And then you can actually go ahead and read the first 3 chapters of my book for free on my website. And I'm sure the link to that will be posted below.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you very much, Jessi, for joining us and sharing your tips, your strategies, being open about mental health and your stories. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks everyone for joining me today and our guest, Jessi Beyer. You can access all the show notes of this episode and other past episodes at theinspiringshow.com. Now, please join our Facebook group, follow us on Instagram, and you can find all those links again in the show notes of inspiringshow.com. Now, if you would like to join us as a friend of the podcast, we would love your support. You can click membership in the menu of our website. And again, that is www.inspiringshow.com. So remember, until next time, you have a story and your story matters.